Good evening, everybody. How are you doing? It's me. It's Comic Crack. It's Sunday, and welcome to the weekly wind-up, I guess, weekly wrap of stuff that I've read this week. Earlier this afternoon, we had our Sunday hangout. It was me, Rasa, and Matt for a couple of hours this afternoon. That was on my channel, so go back and check that out. And there's a link in that description near the end, or right at the end, actually. We end up talking 11 Rockets and talking about a documentary that just came out on kind of a local public, like PBS type of channel. So I put the link for that in the description of that video to watch that for free on YouTube. There's a whole channel. I guess they've got this series of shows that are focused on artists of all sorts, not just comic related, all sorts of things. I think like music, painting, etc. So it seems like it's a long running kind of TV show. So I haven't dug back into any of the other episodes, but this is a solid one to start out with. So we got a bunch of stuff to talk about today. Did quite a bit of reading this week, as opposed to previous weeks where I was kind of battling sickness and not really feeling it. Kind of made up for it. So we'll start with I guess the thing that didn't impress me the most. We'll start like that, and then we'll go from there. So there's from Caliber Press. Fringe was the comic. I've got the first 6 issues. I read the first 5. Let me make sure that I get the credits right here. Paul Tobin, creator, storyteller. Phil Hester, or Philip Hester, penciler, cover artist. And then for the first 4 issues is an inker named Jim Woodyard. And Jim, this was apparently Jim's first work. He only made it through 4 issues, and then he went off to do other things. Off the top of my head, I don't remember what some of those things were, but it wasn't a name that I was familiar with. And honestly, Jim Woodyard's inking was kind of the main draw for me. Hester's art is fine. There's nothing really wrong with it, but Woodyard had a really bold kind of style. Hello, Cthulhu Han Luke, how you doing, man? Woodyard had a really bold kind of style, and there was something to the way he inked some of these figures that just really did it for me. I thought it was really impressive stuff. So the story, oh, you did. Perfect. Beautiful. I hope it all made it okay. Thanks very much. Hope you dig it. The style kind of really made the book. This first issue, I've talked about it before, this first issue worked for me quite a bit. I thought it was a really impressive first issue that really introduced this world really nicely and kind of showed some promise. That rapidly kind of went downhill with the next issues. Number 2 was still okay, but for me, number 2 kind of started showing some of the potential cracks that were coming in the story. It seemed to start to kind of meander. I don't know if it was, what are we looking at here? Probably 90s, right? 91, 92, something like that. I'm not seeing a year right off the top there, but I have a feeling that's the kind of era that we're looking at. From what little I know about Caliber, I believe 89 is when they started publishing stuff. And it feels like those first handful of years was when they were sort of trying things out. Yeah, I'm not seeing a year at all. So even if the story itself started kind of deteriorating, the art was still really impressive. And there was still some really nice stuff going on. Nice panel breakdowns, nice pages like these are incredible stuff to look at. But it started to focus not so much on our main character, but our main character can kind of make you see things that he wants to. Our main character, Fringe, he can make you kind of see reality however he wants you to see it. So there's this super ball that becomes his sort of like id. Hello, comic board. Yes, perfect timing. We're not going to spend too much time, but I did want to elaborate on this a little bit more than we did today. Becomes kind of like his id, and it becomes one of the main characters of the story. Longbox Diver, hello, how are you? And it just starts to it just starts to really meander. I don't know if it's maybe a little unfair to say, but there was an era of kind of, as much as I love Vertigo comics, I have to admit that there was an era with Vertigo that sort of had this writing style that was, it seemed to be trying really hard to be kind of arty, surrealistic. I'm not really sure the proper term for it, but it really seemed to be trying hard to do something that was a little more abstract. But because they were trying so hard, it really kind of fell flat. And that's what happens with this one. The writing just really starts to fall flat, and I really just start to question pretty quickly, why am I reading this? What's the point of this? I thought it would be kind of one issue, but then issue 4 keeps going with the same style of narration, and then issue 5 keeps going with it and almost doubling down, and it just didn't feel like it was going to break. So after issue number 5, I just stopped, and I've packed it up, as you saw, packed it up, and it's getting ready to go in the drawers. I don't know if I'm going to get to issue 6. I'm gonna give it one more shot, maybe this week, if I can bring myself to it. But as soon as I open it up and I see stuff like this, I'm immediately kind of, nah, I'm probably good. I don't get it. I don't think that there is anything to get. I just find that it possibly trying something different, and it just was falling flat for me. And again, I think it's needless to say at this point, but all of these opinions are my own opinions. I'm not saying that it's a good or bad comic. I'm just saying that it didn't work for me, and I didn't get anything out of it. I'm going to try to put those away after the video's over. Anyway, and then we'll just touch briefly on a couple of the books that we talked about in the chat today. Go back and watch that video for sure. One of the really fun reads for me this week was this book, Zam, which is the Zap Jam, the Zap comic artists kind of working on strips together. I found this at a kind of antiques and collectibles sale that took place this weekend at the horse track just down the road. Yeah, I hear you. The person it made sense to, or even the creators themselves, as to maybe what you were going for. Maybe there was some references in there that just weren't going over our head. So I found this at a little kind of antiques and collectibles sale that happened at the racetrack. They're always fun to go to, even if the word antiques scares the shit out of me, because every time you see that word, guarantee you're going to go into that store and find a whole bunch of overpriced garage sale stuff. But this one was a lot of fun to go through, and there was a comic seller there that I'd never seen before. A couple of the local comic addicts from the comic groups here in Winnipeg, a couple of the guys were there, and as soon as I walked up and kind of said our hellos, they pointed me to the last box in the row, and you want to start there. That's the box you're going to want. And they were absolutely right, because it was chock full of really good stuff, including this, which, again, I said this afternoon, I've never seen this in the wild before. I never thought I would ever see it in the wild. Everything in those boxes was 50% off. So I think this cost me, it came to about $12 Canadian, which was damn good for something like this. And it's just a lot of fun. It's an absolute blast when you're seeing like guys like Crumb and Moscoso working together, Robert Williams and S. Clay Wilson working together like they are in this one, Gilbert Shelton, S. Clay Wilson and Robert Williams working on another one. Wonder Warthog takes a brief sojourn in outer space. You just really get the sense that these guys were hanging out together, sitting in a room, cracking jokes, getting high, and just passing pages around to each other as they kind of started their stories. Here's a Spain Rodriguez one, Beyond the Exorcist. So a really, really fun little book. Nothing much to the stories, but if you know the Zap crew, you know the kinds of things you're going to get with this. There's not much surprises here, but it was just a lot of fun to read that thing. So the kind of probably a couple of the highlights from this week. Mark Kalasniko, two books that I read. These were kind of my last Lone Star Comics order were because I wanted these two books, and then I ordered a bunch of stuff around it as well too. So Why Did Pete Duel Kill Himself? And then Mail Order Bride, both by Fantagraphics. Why Did Pete Duel Kill Himself came out in 1997, and then Mail Order Bride was first printing 2001, second printing 2003. So I'm assuming that's a second printing there. Hello, Mr. Sleepy Reader. How are you, man? I'm really digging Mark Kalasniko's writing style. I've read a bunch of stuff now, Alex, and then SOS, and then these two books as well. He didn't have a huge output of material. There's maybe a couple of things that I haven't read yet that I have bookmarked on Lone Star, but these were top-notch kind of quality reads. Both read really nicely. They're both very different reading experiences, though. This one, pretty thin kind of graphic novel, and it's sort of broken up into smaller strips or smaller stories, each with their little title here at the top. So this is Ralph Part 3. So the basic premise of this is there's an actor, a famous actor, who has killed himself, and our main character is trying to figure out why that is. Doesn't really understand, because this idea being that he was famous, he was handsome, he was working in all these shows and TVs, he was very popular. Why the heck would somebody like that want to kill themselves? And he starts reflecting on his own childhood and things that he was exposed to, the bullying that was taking place, and all of these things that just these fuck ups and things that he had done himself too, and sort of analyzing his life. So it has this kind of like, he sort of deals almost with these kind of sad and what could be seen as pathetic characters, although I think that's a pretty strong word to use. But there is this kind of loser type of quality to some of his characters in here. But again, like I've said when we talked about Alex, the paneling is really amazing. I didn't show much from this one in the chat this afternoon, but this is kind of the start of the story as he's just going for a walk, trying to figure what the reason would be that this actor would kill himself. And then, like I said, the rest of it is just kind of the times that he gets bullied and things that are happening to him. He ends up having to go to a special school that's quote unquote for retards, is what they say in the book, as the neighborhood kids kind of taunt him even more because he's got a learning disability. Really great. And just some of the stuff that he witnesses. This is one story near the end here where he really witnesses this teacher abusing one of the students, and the entire class is kind of just frozen in absolute fear. And it's done in kind of these silent panels. Really powerful stuff. So thinking about it again and talking about it again, this is a fantastic book and just as good of a place to start as any. But the one that kind of blew me away was this Mail Order Bride. This is a thick sucker, 260 something pages, 261 pages. And it reads really nicely. One of the things I mentioned this afternoon is it has this kind of, you sort of get into this rhythm at times of manga. He uses a lot of silence in his books. So just like in Alex, where we talked about this kind of passage of time and these people just kind of living in a world and moving through that space. He uses that incredibly well in all his books so far. The basic premise of this one is a guy has ordered himself a Korean bride from a magazine. I don't want to give too many spoilers, but he has this, he owns this collectibles shop. Here's one of our repeating panels here as he asks his wife to dress up in this traditional Korean dress as he, for when they have sex. It sort of becomes his fetish. One of the other main characters talks about how she was married to a guy, had what was called yellow, what she refers to as yellow fever. These guys that have these kinks with Asian women and kind of want them to live this stereotype, and they use that as kind of for sexual gratification. So it feels like he falls into that, but he's also a very sad kind of character who just wants connection with somebody ultimately. So it creates this really nice dynamic between the two of them, because she doesn't fully know what she wants either. And she's kind of exploring this small town and kind of seeing pockets of this small town. It's just an incredible read. I couldn't put it down. I read it right the way through. So one of the things with his style is he ends up using quite a lot of white space for the most part. It's not exclusively that, as you can see there. But as she's kind of experiencing the world, this kind of more artistic side of town, she all of a sudden, one of the places she goes to is is this performance, this sort of interpretive dance performance. And Kalsniko just does a really good job with changing the palette to using a lot of these black passages. I really should start marking stuff. The effect that this particular dance has on her is shown on the page as well too, as she, all of a sudden we see pages where he's using lots of black on the page with these white figures, and there's these cheerleader type figures that are coming out as part of the performance as well, and sort of surrounding this woman. But he comes back to this, and honestly, it really reminds me of kind of like Creepax in a way, this passage. It has this almost dreamlike quality to it, and there's something about the way that he uses the pages here that really remind me of Creepax a little bit. But again, he keeps coming back to these themes where he'll repeat stuff. And as you go further through the book, as you get more involved in the story and find more out about the world, every time you revisit these scenes, they kind of take on a new meaning. I'm realizing that I've got a million things to say about this book as I'm talking about it yet again. And all of it is very, very favorable. It's just a really well laid out story. It's really interesting. It has this real uncomfortable moments. I mean, I think with any of these kind of stories, the ones that really work for you, there's something about the characters, not that you identify exactly with their life, but there's things that you can pull out from their life that absolutely, hello, Gorvidal. Never imagined cheerleaders and creepbacks would be mentioned in a sentence. Beautiful book. There's these moments that you can start to identify to some degree. Now, it's no secret, we've talked about it before. I've been married a couple of times. So there's these kind of relationship moments in here that, again, not mirroring anything that I've gone through, but it's this type of idea of just being in these relationships and just human being to human being when things aren't necessarily working out, and the inability to kind of recognize that. There was a couple of moments that were definitely uncomfortable reading for sure, but I don't know. I don't mind that, because of where the story is going. And this doesn't have exactly an upbeat ending. It's not an extremely downbeat ending either. It's just sort of it almost hits this monotone kind of moment, So yeah, I'm realizing that maybe this one resonated even more than I thought before talking about it out loud, which is one of the great things about kind of doing these chats that we do and making these videos. You get to recycle the stories in your head. Anyway, enough about that. Highly recommended. This or Alex, I think, would be great places to start, keeping your eyes out for either one of those. I have the Alex series in single issues, but it also came as a collected graphic novel as well. As usual, I mean, check out Lone Star. They usually have a lot of this stuff, or you can at least put it on a wish list for when it comes in. I don't think it was very expensive. Even this Mail Order Bride, I think, was only about $10 or $12 American. So considering how much you're getting, it's not a horrible price. Mechanics, one of the other books that I found at this sale was issue number 2 of the 3-issue series. And I also found book 1 here, Music for Mechanics, Los Bros Hernandez. I'm not sure if this is, even though it has a number 1 on the side, I'm not 100% sure about all of these collections that I have for Love and Rockets, if they do actually start at the beginning, or if this is kind of a bunch of stories taken from various issues and put into a graphic novel form. I don't know how important it is to read things chronologically with Love and Rockets, as they always seem to be referring to other stories anyway. But I haven't dug into this yet. But the reason I point this out as well is because the stories that take place in here are also reprinted in here in black and white. So it's broken out into kind of days. They're going to do some work on a rocket ship that has crashed, and it's crashed by a dinosaur corpse, I guess. And it's talking about the little town that they're going to visit and everything that's happening there. She's sort of writing a diary and writing back. Maggie is writing back to Hopi, and kind of just telling her what's going on, telling people what's going on back home. Really, really great stuff. This is a fantastic, in color, this page looks great as well, actually, even though we were talking about the coloring in the Mechanics couple of issues isn't the best. But seeing the black and white, having that to compare to, is really beautiful stuff as she's fighting off this crocodile that's trying to kill Race. So I'm looking forward to going through that, because obviously there's a lot of stuff in here that is not in those books. So very much looking forward to go through this again and kind of dive back into the world of Love and Rockets. So that's it for the stuff we spoke about this afternoon. And then the last few things we'll talk about are things that didn't make it to the chat today. Very, very excited that I was able to get my hands on Dead Man Tells the Spooky Tales. This came out a couple of weeks ago, I think now. This is from the DC Kids graphic novel line. And as soon as I saw the cover, I was drawn to it. There's some amazing artists in here. My daughter and I read this together the other night. And because it's from the kids line, I didn't think it was very scary. She had a couple of stories she really enjoyed that were a little creepy, but I mean, in no way were they kind of intensely scary by any stretch. They're very, very kid-friendly stories, but the artists are unbelievable in this, some of them. And one of the main artists that really worked for me was Sarah Richard, pictured up here at the top. She's the one that does this style for it's sort of Dead Man as horror host. So her style, just absolutely gorgeous. It's really, really nice stuff. And I think it works so well with this kind of horror anthology type of format. She has a real cool style for Dead Man. I'll kind of show you a couple of other pages here where she just creates a really unique look. I would love to see a full Dead Man story from her, or any of the DC horror hosts. I think it would be fantastic to hear to see her interpretation. There's another great page there. I'll show you one more here. So there was one where Dead Man turns into a bat that has a really fantastic look to it. The stories themselves were very, again, because they're written for kids with kids in mind, some of them don't feel like complete stories. Here you go. There's the Dead Man as a bat there, which I think is a really amazing illustration. Beautiful, beautiful stuff, like very abstract kind of shapes and line work. Really incredible. Yeah, it really is. I agree with you. There's something about the kids' books where they're willing to try some stuff. One of the stories that worked art-wise that I thought was fantastic was one called page 69 here. Let's go to the table of contents. Page 69 is called Fall, and it's illustrated by Morgan Beam. And it's beautiful. The story is really a nice little story. Fall is happening, and there's this kind of creature that sort of makes itself seen as a big pile of leaves. And it's these kids just kind of interacting with that as they're going and helping one of the neighbors rake the leaves in his yard. So, but this illustration is really amazing. I love the coloring on it. It gives it a really cool look. There you go. You can see, I'm guessing, and again, I don't know anything about anything, but I'm guessing it's watercolor to paint that there, or at least that's what it appears to me, to my untrained eye. But someone can correct me if I'm wrong about that. But I loved this story a lot. The story itself was really nice, very simple, but the art is what really caught my attention with this one. And here you can see kind of eyes in the trees as they're figuring out what the hell is coming. So this was a really fun book. It was the last one they had at Galaxy. I'll just show you kind of random pages. It was the last one that they had at Galaxy. It was hard to find. I'm glad that I got it. And like I said, stuff like this, I'm always willing to pick up for me and my daughter. One where a ghost is sort of Ren and Stimpy-ish. A ghost is born from the litter box of a cat who's just taken a big shit and kind of follows the cat around. So silly kind of stories, as well as stuff that's a little creepy. Like this one. This first story was a little creepy. This is one of the ones that creeped Lillian out. There's this ghost, this woman that's died in this house, and they're going to clean out the house, and for some reason there's these hands. It's never really talked about, which is also part of the issue, that it's never really talked about why there's hands. There was no backstory to this lady that would make you think that something happened with her hands, but lo and behold, at the end, she's buried under one gravestone and her hands are buried under another. So what will adult DC Comics look like in 20 years when this generation is growing up? Yeah, absolutely. It'll be very interesting to see where they take it. So yeah, I mean, for those of you out there that do have kids, or for those of you who just want to read something, this is, you know, around 150-ish pages. So, and again, you're getting just a wide array of storytelling here, and some styles that didn't work so much for me. But like I said, my daughter and I flew through this, and she genuinely liked it. It was a pretty good read. So Dead Man Tells the Spooky Tales. Storytelling wise, nothing exceptional, but art wise, pretty phenomenal. Forbidden 3D. So this kind of tells the story of comic books getting burned, and kind of the effect that they were having on people. It sort of runs the history, and it's interesting enough. The story, we've all heard versions of the story. We're all very familiar with it. Part of me. This is from 1993. Story by Ray Zone, art by Chuck Roblin is the artist's name. But it's the art that I'm here for. I didn't quite understand this yellow and black, but I was really enjoying it until I got to the center spread, where it's the town gathering around and bathing basically in the light of all these comic books getting burnt. And then of course it was, well, of course that's what the color was representing. I'm not sure why I didn't think of that previously, but it took this giant splash page to sort of get me going on it. Beautifully illustrated, really beautiful. The storytelling itself, it's very kind of history based, so it really hits the marks. There's not much flourish to the storytelling here. We're not kind of dealing with a fantastical tale. This is very by the numbers, news reporting almost. So not the most exciting of reads, but page by page, and it's on this really, really nice kind of thicker glossy paper. It's kind of oversized, so magazine sized, I would say. So you really get to bask in that coloring and that art. which is gorgeous. So yeah, there you go, Forbidden 3D. It was the same company that did the other 3D books that I have talked about recently, and another one that we'll quickly look at now. So this is the one we had talked about before, Brain Bat 3D. Really great as well. And then this one here was Peekaboo 3D. The Dead Man book is on Hoopla. Oh, cool. Oh, shit, really? Apropos of nothing, just heard that Whatnot, the app, has bought up Heavy Metal. What? That's bizarre. For what purpose? My assumption was that Whatnot was just about auctioning and selling, isn't it? Are they trying to get into publishing as well? That sounds detrimental, to be honest. A bunch of fucking flippers getting into heavy metal. Not that I'm reading heavy metal these days, but that does seem very bizarre. This one was a blast. A lot more fun than I thought it would be. I've always heard of these kind of pornographic comics or fetish style comics. Maybe not pornographic isn't the right word. Bill Ward starts us out with the character Torchy. The 3D is, I'm a sucker for 3D. I'm an absolute sucker for 3D. There was a pair of glasses that I had laying around that now made their way into this book. The 3D works well, but it's really cool to see this old stuff. And especially when we get into Gene Bilbrew and his stories of women just fighting and wrestling, whether it's with other women or whether it's beating the shit out of dudes. He seemed to have, from what little I know, he seemed to have this, same with Stanton, I guess. Eric Stanton would have been in the same kind of genre to some degree within these fetish magazines. I think Eric Stanton worked in this magazine, Bizarre, I think is what it was called. I'm not sure if Bilbrew worked in the same thing there. But they're great. They're really good. You're getting women in various states of undress, drinking, smoking, and fighting. And it's just incredible shit. It's really fantastic for its completely cheesy base storytelling. Oh, and I never noticed that because I read it all, and with the 3D glasses, the color kind of shifts there a bit, which would make sense because I think these pages themselves weren't the greatest 3D here, but if the colors shifted, that would make sense. And then another Gene Bilbrew here at the end, Kitty Kane. And again, more of the same. Women beating the shit out of each other. So amazing stuff. This was a lot of fun, actually. With all of this heavy reading, it's nice to get something that's a little more base, I guess. And I don't mean based. Let's see here. Whatnot has started doing variant covers. Jesus Christ. I guess that they think they can use heavy metal as part of their hype machine. Locally, those that are Whatnot obsessed are Marvel Comics and toy sellers and speculators. Yeah, I mean, there's a bunch of those guys that were always talking Whatnot on that chat show that you and I were watching there, Gore. I can't remember the name, the flip side guys there. It's hard to imagine anything about heavy metal that they'd really care about other than more variant covers, yeah, and stuff to sell. Anyway, Lance Kerrigan of the Galactic Legion. I started with issue number 3. I haven't read issue number 2. And the reason I started with issue number 3 is because it was color, and this art is unbelievable. So thanks to Russ Works, Jay Disbrow is kind of a golden age artist who kind of had a resurgence and was working a lot with some publishers. And actually, Russ was talking about in the comments that Disbrow worked with Fantagraphics early on, and I would love to. I haven't done it yet. I've got to look into the early Fantagraphics stuff to see if I can find some more. His art is incredible, and the story is what you'd expect. It has that golden age kind of serial storytelling about this main character. Nothing really to write home story-wise, but this art is so gorgeous that I wish, and honestly, even the paper quality of this one is really, really nice. I was completely absorbed in this. I couldn't tell you the first damn thing about the stories at all, but it was just such a good time going through this. This really feels like what I would assume those old serial pulps would have felt like if you were reading them. But the line work and the use of the blacks in this one is really incredible. You can see they're much bolder. We're not talking about a ton of feathering and things like that. We're looking at kind of bold blacks filling in shadows with this really bright colors. So I think this was only a 3-issue series from Quest. Quest Presents. 1983 is when this came out. And yeah, I mean, I would say if any of this appeals to you, you need to find this one, especially, like I said, especially issue 3. As far as I know, because I don't have issue number 1, I believe this is the only one that's in color, because they do end up promoting it at the end of issue number 2, which I haven't dug into yet. I haven't looked at it yet. Or I've looked at it, but I haven't read it yet. Sorry. We'll take a quick peek through issue number 2. But check this out. Like, that's unbelievable looking stuff here. So a lot of fun. I'll just kind of show you some of the interiors there. Again, the black and white stuff isn't horrible. It's still got a really cool look to it, but the color is what really took me with this stuff. But there's a look at some of the black and white. Beautiful stuff there. So that was Lance Kerrigan of the Galactic Legion, of course. On to one that I thought I would like a lot more than I actually did. Wasn't bad, but I thought it would be a lot more fun. This Fleener, issue number 1 from Zongo Comics, which Colin was nice enough to comment in that video that Zongo was an offshoot of Bongo, and it was supposed to kind of publish a few kind of independent cartoonists. They ended up doing Mary Fleener and doing some Jimbo comics, I think like a 5 or 6 issue run. And of course, because I'm on video, I'm blanking on the Jimbo artist's name right now. Silent comic about these little characters. And it just, I don't know. It was good. The thing that I like about Fleener, I like her stories. I like her tales of sex, drugs, and rock and roll. I like her bizarre Picasso-esque type of art. I don't know. This just didn't really do too much for me. It felt like Panther. Thank you very much, Gary Panther. It felt like it was a little more geared towards a younger market. And it just wasn't that exciting. Nice enough to look at and everything, but even that, it didn't really grab me as much as I thought it would. I thought that there was potential here for something a lot more fun than it turned out. By all means, pick it up if you see it. Give it a shot if you like anything that you're seeing, but it didn't blow me away like some of the other Fleener stuff I've been reading lately. But I am glad that I got it. I guess, Damien, but it seemed like too much story and too much kind of these animated characters kind of moving through space and just these kind of silly little gags. And I don't know, it just didn't really, yeah, there was just not much there. It didn't feel like there was a beginning, middle, or an end. It just felt like you could jump in whenever and just get a couple of pages of silly characters jumping around and laughing. I don't know. Maybe I'm being a little too critical, but there you have it. Another one that was enjoyable, but I'm glad that he only did 1 issue. Raymond from Boswell. I'm blanking on his first name right now. But he of Reed Fleming fame, and this is from Deep Sea Comics. what year? 1985 is when this. Oh no, sorry, 1998. David Boswell is his first name. As I talked about when I picked this up, or when this came in from Lone Star, sort of a superhero of sorts. He's kind of a goofball. It had its moments. I wish it had more kind of Reed Fleming style humor. There wasn't enough absurdity. There wasn't enough stupid gags. But this was still pretty fun. I can see why he didn't do any more of these stories, though, because there's really not much to this one. Not that Reed Fleming has years of depth or anything where you're reading all sorts of subtext, but I wish this kind of was more in that vein of the Reed Fleming stupid ass jokes from like panel to panel. But yeah, this was, I'm glad that I picked it up and gave it a shot, and I would recommend it for sure, but that's only because I love Boswell's art style quite a bit. So there you go, that's Raymond. And finally for tonight, one last thing that I'm still not really sure what I think of it, to be honest. I do feel like I think there's 2 other issues. I do feel like I need those other issues. I don't know if I'm ever going to find them because it's not a book that pops up ever. This is Antisocial Terrorists from a company called Helpless Anger. And this was 1990 is when this book came out. There's 2 stories in this one. Our main story is about this terrorist, this main female protagonist, who we kind of jump right into it, and she's written a note. Again, it sort of falls in that, this one sort of falls in that territory of, we talked about it before with that Boneyard Press comic, where at the end of the day, there's one creator that's creating this, and it kind of enters this darkness that is really, it kind of takes on a different level of disturbing because it's kind of coming from one individual. So it says it's a contemporary satire about the electronic media and the people who capitalize on the spectacularization of obscene acts by angry souls who unfortunately believe they have somehow become victims of the American way of life. So the premise, and even reading that paragraph again, sort of put it in a little more context. But with stuff like that, I always wonder if it's just a bag of bullshit just to get a exploitation style story. So we start out the story with our main character who's written a letter to her mom and dad, or as she says, mom and daddy, and just talking about, by the time you read this, I will probably be dead. Before you read whatever they say about me in the papers, I want you to know that I love you, and whatever I did, it's not your fault. I hope you will remember only the good things about me. If I could start all over again, maybe things could be different, but it's too late now. I'm ready to accept the consequences for what I'm doing. I don't expect you to forgive me. Just understand that I never meant to hurt you. Your loving daughter, Andrea, I think is what that says. So with that, we cut to Andrea going into a mall and mowing people down and just indiscriminately killing men, women, and even more disturbingly, children, like shown in this panel here, which, so right off the hop, I'm kind of thrown into this. What the fuck? What am I reading? Why am I reading this? Why did I want this book? The art is unbelievable. It has a really unique look to it. But again, there's something that's an extra layer of disturbing with something like this when you know it comes from one person's psyche. And again, there was only 3 of this one, Gore. I believe there's only 3 issues. It's been really hard to find. They did have some copies on the Last Gasp website, so I would say keep your eyes out there. And also, of course, keep your eyes out on Lone Star. But honestly, this took forever for this one to show up at Lone Star. So I don't know how easy it is to get the other ones. What the creator does really good in this, I'm assuming it's K.L. Roberts is the creator behind this, is there really does take this turn of this woman starting to get these kind of disgusting hangers on. Like even her lawyer a scumbag in a way not usually associated with lawyers and stories like this. There's these Hollywood producers who want to buy her story, who come in to see her. They show kind of the negative of the penal system, where she gets beaten and raped by guards. She gets beaten and raped by other inmates. So it's this really just piling on of just horrible shit that happens to this woman. And then this kind of light that starts to come out of it as her lawyer is manipulating her to kind of gain her trust so he can take over any sort of he can kind of become the middleman in these kind of conversations with these Hollywood execs and Hollywood producers that want to create movies about her life. So so you can see that she's already getting set up for even more heartbreak than she already has. She comes to terms pretty quickly with what she's done, and she wants to accept her fate. She wants to die, but he kind of keeps pushing her to try to look at a brighter side of things. And you're just this poor mixed up girl because he's got this other motivation, right? So it is a dark, dark story. I mean, I'd be lying if I said I wasn't curious what the other two issues, what happened in them, but I just don't know how hard I'm going to be looking for this one. Because again, when it gets to stuff like this, it feels a little too dark, even for my insensitivity, I guess. And then we get the second story with a cat character, Space Inquisition Downfall, and I started reading it and I sort of gave up. It lost my interest pretty quick. This cat kind of breaks the fourth wall, and talks to you as the reader right off the top, and kind of like, what are you here for? You want to see me kind of get run through the mill again, like grist through the mill or whatever. So it has this kind of thing going for it, where again, it's this character that gets caught up in this religious kind of cult and becomes a leader. And it was a little, as you can see, it was a little too wordy, and it just didn't capture me in the way the first story did. As dark as the first story was, it at least caught my interest. This one just wasn't catching my interest. And I think this one continues throughout the 3 issues as well, too, as a backup. And on the back, we get best wishes, terrorists. The other interesting thing about this was the back page, the Helpless Anger catalog, where they go through everything else that they've published way back when, including Miss Antisocial, 16 little pages, 2-color glossy cover. Mary Fleener is in that one as well. Barb War, Ellen Ferguson, story by Carol Pfefferman. So there's a bunch of stuff that they've done, including a series of books that are called Antisocial. Looks like 4 issues. They did postcards. They did a book called Antisocial Junior. So they had quite a history of publishing. In my little bit of looking online, I couldn't find much in the way of anything else from them. I found some images and things, but not even a ton of those. So this really feels like it was a very kind of underground publication, which would make sense if it was also being offered on the Last Gasp website. So if that interests you, by all means, check it out. Like I said, it was a little too dark even for me, but the art style is absolutely incredible. It really kind of sits in that world that I love about this kind of stuff. Like that grotesque kind of features on all of the people within the story, not just the main characters. They all kind of have this grotesque kind of sneer. Even this cat has that same sort of sneer on his face, right? So yeah, that's Terrorists. Pardon me. And I think that was it. Let's have a quick look. Yes, that is it for today, people. Thanks very much for hanging out. Yeah, it is. I'll quickly show you the other couple of books that I got from this sale. So just the last couple of books that I found at this sale. Again, there wasn't a ton of things, but because it was 50% off, I grabbed them. Another issue of Ragmop. I guess there was a 3-issue series from Rob Walton, Image Comics. So this was issue number 2. Yeah, issue number 2 from that. So I thought I'd add that to the pile of Ragmop that I already have. Rock and Roll Madness Funnies with a fantastic Greg Irons cover. This is a UK publication. I think it's Cosmic Comics. I haven't looked through this yet. It's just there. Oh, you are? Nice. The original one or this Image Comics one? So that's a nice one. I think this was 2 issues of this Rock and Roll Madness that came out. That's the only one that I have. Sleazy Scandals of the Silver Screen. 1 issue. I think this was only 1 issue from Kitchen Sink. Marilyn Monroe, Suicide or Voodoo Right. The Shocking Truth About Fatty Arbuckle. Liberace and His Mysterious Life, etc. Not one that I've seen before. One that I've seen online. I never thought I'd see it in person. This is Net Profit, and this is about fishing and how the dolphins are getting caught up in nets, etc. So sort of on the Edu-Comics tip from the underground scene. That sticker was right on the book as well too, but a kind of cool oddity. Okay, the original 10 issues. Cool. Yeah, I don't have all of the original ones. I think I've got a handful, but I stopped because I'm missing a couple issues. Like, I think maybe I either read the first 2 or the first 3. I don't remember, but I had to stop because I'm missing some issues in there. So that was it for that sale. But like I said, it turned out to be a lot more fun than I thought it would be for an antique sale. All right. Thanks very much, everybody. Damien, Matt, Gorvidal, great to see you. Cthulhu Han, Luke, thanks for coming. Who else did I miss? Longbox Diver, thanks very much for hanging out. And we'll talk to you all next week.